Rising sea levels, severe droughts, the melting of the polar caps, the more frequent and devastating natural disasters all raise demand for humanitarian assistance and disaster relief. After every major conflict, World War I, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, the fall of the Soviet Union, what happened was that we ultimately hollowed out the force, largely by doing deep across-the-board cuts. Today, I think the attitude is that governing is not necessarily good politics, and the result is that it's much more partisan and much more divided. The United States, and the presidents made this clear, does not want Iran to develop a nuclear weapon. That's a red line for us. And it's a red line obviously for the Israelis, so we share a common goal here. My whole life has been dedicated to public service. The American dream has been defended, in every generation, by the brave men and women willing to fight and die for America. They are our greatest national treasure. They deserve a serious commander-in-chief. You know, as director of the CIA, I got an awful lot of intelligence about all the horrible things that could go on across the world. The last thing I want to do is to make the mistakes of the past. When you're smaller and leaner, you're not going to have that large a presence throughout the world. China is a major power in the Pacific, and I think we are dealing with some common threats in that region. The whole issue of Korea and the stability of Korea, the whole issue of nuclear proliferation, the whole issue of providing free access to our ships that are operating in that area. I suddenly realized at the CIA that I had to make life and death decisions about people. I think what both Republicans and Democrats need to do, and the leaders on both sides, is to recognize that if sequester takes place, it would be disastrous for our national defense and very frankly for a lot of very important domestic programs. They have a responsibility to come together, find the money necessary to de-trigger sequester. If the Iraqis fail to implement the reforms, if they fail to get a handle on the violence, there's nothing the United States can do, militarily or otherwise, that can solve those problems. They have to assume the primary responsibility to govern themselves. Go forward, knowing that you are greater than the challenges of your time. There's no question that the main location of Al-Qaeda is in tribal areas of Pakistan. Winning in Afghanistan is having a country that is stable enough to ensure that there is no safe haven for Al-Qaeda or for a militant Taliban that welcomes Al-Qaeda. That's really the measure of success for the United States. Well, look, CIA is an agency that has to collect intelligence, do operations. We have to take risks, and it's important that we take risks and that we know that we have the support of the government and we have the support of the American people in what we're doing. The United States will do whatever we have to do to protect our forces. You know, one thing I've learned over 40 years is that when you have jobs in Washington, you do it day by day, and that's what I'm doing as Secretary of Defense. I don't engage in hypotheticals. I mean, the Taliban, my view is that they have been weakened. We have not seen them able to conduct any kind of organized attack to regain any territory that they've lost. We've seen levels of violence going down. Frankly, my fundamental beliefs have not changed. Throughout the 40 years I've been in Washington, I've always worked hard, particularly with regards to the budget issues. Iran's continued drive to develop nuclear capabilities, including troubling enrichment activities and past work on weaponization documented by the IAEA, and its continued support to groups like Hezbollah, Hamas and other terrorist organizations make clear that the regime in Tehran is a very grave threat to all of us. Iran is isolating itself from the rest of the world. Rather than undermining the Palestinian Authority, it is in Israel's interests to strengthen it by continuing to transfer Palestinian tax revenues and pursuing other avenues of cooperation. Well, the United States is a Pacific power, and we have always had a presence in the Pacific. When you cut $500 billion from the defense budget, it affects almost every area in the defense budget. Al-Qaeda still remains a threat. I think soon after I became director of the CIA, President Obama pulled me into the Oval Office and said, "Look, I just want you to know that your top priority is to go after Osama bin Laden." In this century, the 21st century, the US recognizes our prosperity and our security depends even more on the Asia-Pacific region. Well, you know, any defense force worth its salt has to be able to deal with uncertainty, has to be able to deal with events that we may not have planned for. We either believe in the dignity of the individual, the rule of law, and the prohibition of cruel and unusual punishment, or we don't. There is no middle ground. I'm going to give people the benefit of the doubt. I'm not big on commissions. I don't think I should penalize people who were doing their duty. I think the primary message to the world is that the United States is going to remain the strongest military power in the world. If you're a terrorist, you're a terrorist. It doesn't make a lot of sense for us to borrow money from the Chinese to go give to another country for humanitarian aid. We ought to get the Chinese to take care of the people. Unfortunately these days, there is a hell of a lot that keeps me awake. The Taliban is resilient. I mean, the Taliban, my view is that they have been weakened. The fundamental premise is that neither the United States or the international community is going to allow Iran to develop a nuclear weapon. The United States has to have the capability to deal with more than one enemy at one time and be able to confront them and win. Red lines are kind of political arguments that are used to try to put people in a corner. You don't deploy forces into harm's way without knowing what's going on. I don't think there's any question that America is safer as a result of the Bin Laden operation. These days, it takes only seconds, for a picture, a photo, to suddenly become an international headline. The United States was attacked on September 11, 12, and we know who attacked us. The United States is going to defend itself under any circumstances. Visit our website for more quotes, quoting.com.